Well, here we go again. We are on our next lesson, which is lesson 74, adjective phrases. And so we're moving into longer pieces, not just one word that's an adjective, but multiple words. And just as a bit of review, I want you to think about when we've talked about phrases and clauses and what those words mean. So if you're thinking about clauses, you really should be thinking independent and dependent clauses. Independent clauses are like your parents. Dependent clauses are like you. But either one is going to have a subject and verb piece in it. However, phrases might have nouns. They might even have verbals that look like verbs, but they are not going to have both. They are not going to have the subject verb piece. However, you're going to have phrases that are describing multiple words put together that are describing a noun. And that's what adjectives do. Remember that adjectives hang out with nouns and adverbs hang out with verbs. So there's a couple of things that we want to look at. So if you refer to your gray book or your gray box on page 345, there's just a couple things we want to point out. Your adjective phrase could be a prepositional phrase. And remember, I've kind of poo-pooed prepositional phrases all year that they're not really important for anything. Well, they're going to start getting more important because they are a great way to provide some description. So prepositional phrase may be a participial phrase or an infinitive phrase, and it can be used to modify something. So let's take a look at this example on your screen. And it says, grandfather has a story to tell. Well, here we have this to tell. Now we know from the previous lesson that this is a verbal, to tell. It's a couple words put together, so it's also a phrase. And it is modifying story. We could just end by saying grandfather has a story, but to tell is a little bit more, so it's a modifying story. A verbal phrase can have a direct object and is going to be placed on a line like below. And so I pulled up an example here because this is, sometimes when you put all these words together, it's hard to imagine in your head what's going on. So if you look down at this verbal, or at this example, the boys seeing their mistake were sorry. So we know that boys is the subject, were is the verb, and then slanted line, it means that we have a predicate adjective there. However, we have this piece in here, seeing their mistake. And remember, to diagram that, it's describing the boys. So we do a slanted line, take a slight right. So there's our verbal. Seeing, but we can answer that what question? Seeing what? Seeing their mistake. And so you can, just like when we did verbals before and we have the pedestal, we were able to place direct objects. We're also able to place direct objects here. Seeing what? Seeing mistake. And then whose mistake? Their mistake. So I wanted to show you how to diagram that within what we did in the gray box here, because it is important to remember that. Don't leave that word mistake out. One other thing in the gray box, it talks about misplaced phrases. Now we're going to have a little bit of fun with this because your homework is, you're going to have a little bit of additional homework, not additional, but of creative homework. How's that? But I want to talk about misplaced phrases. We've talked about this before because we can also see it in misplaced clauses. So here's a couple of examples, and I actually just pulled these from the back of the back of this chapter. So 349 is where you would find these. But here is what we've got. The box was given to the man with several songbooks inside. Well, it makes it, there we've got a phrase with several songbooks inside, but it makes it sound like it's describing man. Well, it's kind of hard to imagine a man with songbooks inside him. Here's another one. Two girls handed out the candy in blue sweaters. It sounds like the candy was in blue sweaters. So just like with misplaced clauses, we have to be really careful to not misplace our phrases. And we're going to look at a few of those in just a minute. So go back to, if you are if you have your book out in front of you, we're going to look at just a few of the examples. We're going to talk through some of the stuff on 346 and 347, and then we'll do a little bit of class practice just to make sure that you understand what you're supposed to do with this. So there's a few examples of how to diagram. So I did want to take a look at that on page 346. The first one, the angel of God brought the shepherds in the field a message of hope. So we have lots of prepositional phrases thrown in here. Now remember, previously we looked at infinitives and verbal phrases, and there could be some of those thrown in here. But right now, all we have is prepositional phrases that we're going to look at. So here we have angel, brought. That's obviously our subject verb, and brought what? Brought message. So that's our direct object. Then we have all these little prepositional phrases. Angel of God, shepherds in the field, and message of hope. Now notice at the top of 346, here we have the slanted line, slight right, that shows of God. That's just a prepositional phrase, but they're both those and the verbal phrases are diagrammed the same way. Then we have shepherds, and that is an indirect object. So that's why that's dropped down. But then you see in the field right off of shepherds and of hope right off of message. So get into the habit. A lot of times you ask me, do we have to diagram the prepositional phrases? Yeah, at this point you really do. So there's several examples. I would encourage you, if you're having trouble, to come back to that. If we take a look at page 347, we are going to see the participial phrases again, infinitive phrases again, and we are going to be looking at how they function in the sentence. So we've already looked at these, but we can see how these could be adjectives. So take a look at 347. I like the second, singing cheerfully, the girls cleaned the kitchen. So singing cheerfully is modifying the girls. We watch the clouds floating overhead. That's a little further down on 347. What's modifying clouds? Floating overhead. And so again, that's going to be that slanted line, slight right, and put that there. Infinitive phrases, the same. I gave you this one further up here in your examples. Grandfather has a story to tell. We could add other words to it. Grandfather has a story to tell now, or grandfather has a story to tell us now. So there's lots of words that you could add in to these phrases, prepositional or verbal, and you can really add a lot of description to your writing this way. The misplaced clauses, I wanted to spend a few minutes on that. The rest is just examples. Again, look through them as you're doing your homework. But the misplaced clauses, I just think are really funny. If you look on page 349, there's a couple more than the ones I gave you. The children drew sketches of the playful lambs sitting outside. Well, who was sitting outside? The playful lambs or the girls? The next one we saw, much trash on the ground to pick up. Is the ground picking up the trash, or are we picking up the trash? So we want to clear those things up. So one of the things that I want you to do for homework, and this should be on the has, is that I want you to create 3 funny sentences with misplaced clauses. You can use the examples to help get you started and maybe just change the wording a little bit. But I want to, and then when you send them to me, I want to post them on our 7th grade discussion board, just as another way to push you into Sycamore, but just so that you can maybe chuckle. And we are going to have, I'm going to have some prizes for these. So for my top 3 winners, there will be a $5 Amazon gift card, because I can send that to you via the internet. So maybe you can find a book that you want to get or something to keep you busy. So $5 gift card for our top 3 funnies. and I look forward to getting those so each one of you are doing 3 of them. So that's a lot of possibilities. If you can think of more, you're welcome to do more. But I want you to use the whole misplaced clauses, and then you can, I'm going to assume you know how to fix it. You don't have to show me the fix. But before I sign you off for homework, I do want to take a look at a couple of the class practices. So look at page 350, A, and number 1, the first king of Israel came from the tribe of Benjamin. It says, read each prepositional phrase used as an adjective and tell what word it modifies. So the first one is of Israel. It modifies king. The second one is of Benjamin, and it modifies tribe. Now, if you look at from the tribe, that is also a phrase, but it is an adverbial phrase. So we're going to get to that later. Number 2, Melanie's reputation for thoughtfulness is well deserved. So you want to look for where is the prepositional phrase. And if you said for thoughtfulness, you were right. And what does that modify? It's usually the word that comes right after, but not always. So in this case, it's going to be reputation. The next one, the shelves in the basement were loaded with jars of food. So in the basement is the first one, and what does it modify? If you said shelves, you were correct. What is the next prepositional phrase? Well, hopefully you said of food, and that modifies jars. So hopefully you have that one. And then the next in B, we want to read each participial phrase and tell what word it modifies. So let's do a couple of these. Sitting at Jesus' feet, Mary had chosen the better part. Well, we're looking for INGs now. So sitting at Jesus' feet is the phrase. So I want that whole thing. And then you should be able to tell me what it modifies. It has to modify a noun, probably Mary. The second one, John the Baptist, preaching repentance, prepared the way for Christ. And we're looking for that ING, and preaching repentance, and who would it modify? John the Baptist. And then let's take a real quick look at C, and it's looking for the infinitive phrase used as an adjective and tell what word it modifies. They cried, but there was none to save them. If you find the word to, you'll find it. So to save them is the phrase, and what does it modify? None. And finally, Abram was not a man to enjoy strife. You're looking for the to. That's to enjoy strife, and that is going to be modifying man. Now, as you get to the diagramming parts, if you are having a hard time, please let your mom know and have her email me, and I can send you the solutions for this. Otherwise, you'll be doing the homework, you'll be doing written exercises, probably the odds, but I need to look through that a little bit more because I do want you to work on those 3 misplaced phrases for me. So until next time, I hope you have a lovely weekend, and I will see you next week.